The City of Bettendorf Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Monday, March 6th, 2023. It's 5:00 p.m. Thank you all for being here. In light of some changes at the state level, Jason has been working hard and maybe not sleeping as well, since we probably would have certified a budget by now or very close to now. That process has dragged on, and for some discussion in that area, we welcome our Finance Director, Jason Schatt. Jason?
Thank you, Your Honor. There were a few more gray hairs in my lap when I got a haircut yesterday. So I can't say for sure that it was all due to this budget, but it has been about a month since we had our Saturday budget work session back on February 11th. And tonight we'll talk about what is now the third version of the FY 23-24 budget. This is a really quick update. We'll have another workshop here before the adoption of the budget at the next Committee of the Whole. Back in February, we were all concerned with Senate File 181. This was the bill recalculating the residential rollback and reducing that from 56.49% to 54.65%. That bill was signed into law on Monday, February 20th. It reduces property tax and replacement revenue now by $966,000. Now that we have certified values, we were working with estimates of those values prior to this when we said that number was $912,000. The law allowed county auditors 15 days to recertify property values, and thank you to Scott County and the auditor's office. Those values were available to us to start working with just 3 days after the bill was signed. So
They were the fastest ones in the state.
that was awesome. And it does extend the budget deadline from March 31st to April 30th, so it gives us an extra month. But that will be a pretty busy month, as you can see by this action calendar. By next Friday, March 17th, we'll have to have our maximum levy hearing notice sent to the paper. They require a week in advance of publication, so that'll be published on March 25th. In between those two dates, on March 20th, we'll have another Committee of the Whole discussion of the budget, and ideally kind of finalize the budget that night on the 20th. Then I'll take you down to April 4th. We'll hold the maximum levy public hearing. And then on April 18th, if all goes well, we'll hold the public hearing to adopt the budget and certify the taxes. That one we could push back as late as April 28th if we wanted to kind of observe the happenings at the state legislature until the very last minute.
We should have a pretty good idea by the 8th, I would think.
Yes. And I will say, this maximum levy hearing notice that will be published on the 25th, sent there next Friday, the 17th, we'll kind of set it high. We can always come under that in our certified budget. We cannot go over that, so. Legislation we're still watching, SSB 1124 would eliminate some of the levies available to cities, none of which the city of Bettendorf currently uses, and limit valuation and tax growth pretty substantially. I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second. Another one is SSB 1125. While it would increase sales tax rates and sales tax revenue to the city, it reduces the commercial rollback from 90% to 80%, and alters tax credits such as the homestead credit by increasing the amount exempt from property taxes and not crediting that back to cities like it is today. So we're definitely expecting growth in taxable value next year to be reduced and potentially our options to respond limited. This third version of the budget, V3, sorry. We are recommending, really in response to that SSB 1124, where they're going to kind of cap levy rates and valuation growth, we're recommending we combine levies all into the general fund. So our operating levies will be $785, all in the general fund. $785 is a nickel more than it is this year. We'll talk about that in a second. Additional levying capacity under the current law is $11 million, just as it was when we talked back at budget. If SSB 1124 to be put in place, your general fund levy would really be limited and actually be forced to be reduced in the future. So your levying capacity drops to about 7 million. But the idea being here, if that general fund levy is not able to grow or even be reduced in the future, we can come back to these other four levies: health insurance, liability insurance, police and fire pension, and transit, and start kind of recouping that loss through those levy rates.
Jason, at the bottom of the total tax dollars there between version 2 and version 3, we're looking at 130-some, $6,000.
Exactly.
And do you plan to walk us through kind of what you're thinking?
That happens to be the value of a nickel.
Right.
On the general fund. And on the next couple of slides, I'll show you how that changed in version 3 from version 2.
Yeah. Thanks.
So here on page 6, changes since V2. We heard your desires in the budget session to try to fund some of those staffing requests, especially there in the community development area and the library area. So we've put that code enforcement officer in. We have reduced the seasonal code enforcement to help make up some of that cost. We've put that extra plan review position in, and we've kept in the other requests there in the planning division. At the library, there were 3 total requests, 2 of which were upgrades. 1 was new. We've removed the new position and kept in 2 upgrades. And Jillian was able to actually reduce the library materials budget by $18,500 to kind of cut into the bulk of that increased cost. But all told, costs are up $158,487 from the version 2 budget. On the revenue side, we're proposing some increases to licenses and permits. That'll get you $58,500 in the general fund. We would also do the same on those sewer connection fees in the sewer fund, but that doesn't really help us in the general fund or with the tax levy. And then the property tax increase of a nickel, it looks a little funny here. It will net you just about $100,000 more than version 2. And that's because of that change in valuation. I unfortunately overestimated taxable value in version 2 just a touch. So we're not gonna get the whole 137,000 that a nickel would get us based on that change in the certified values. So that's how we've funded those increases since version 2. Obviously, in version 2, we removed all the staff requests as kind of a first attempt at balancing the budget, but this accomplishes that as well. Property tax impact on that average home that we like to talk about, which this year was $272,723 in value. Under version 2, with no nickel increase, it was going to be $18 a year in property tax increase. With the nickel, it's about $7 more, just up to $25 per year, or just about 1% increase over last year. On a commercial property, they're getting a big break due to the business property tax rollback. It was a credit. Now it's being treated like a rollback. The first $150,000 is rolled back to the residential rate. So when the SF 181 changed the rollback, it also changed taxable values on commercial as well. But they're going to get a tax bill of about $627,000, $627 less than last year, 5% decrease on a $1 million commercial property.
And Jason, that's about $330,000 for us, that change?
Yes, in total.
The first 150 being taxed at 56%.
Yeah, and that was right off the top. We knew that was coming at the beginning of budget, but so now you're dealing with, a 1.2, almost $1.3 million.
But that took place in last year's legislature, right towards the end. So
Yep.
that was in last year, and so then the first thing out of the blocks was the rollback change. And so you can see why we would like to try to get as close as we can to April 28th, because it's the way they do things.
Then on page 8, just a summary of the impact of all of those taxes and fees across the utility funds. This changed just slightly because of the change in values and rollbacks, where the tax increase on a residential property was 18, it's now 25. You can see with the increases in the enterprise funds that the total increase in costs for that average home for the full year is about $47, or just under $4 per month. It's a total increase of just 1.9% in a year where we're all facing, obviously, costs rising at a much faster clip than that. On the commercial side, that big tax decrease will actually reduce their total costs, including utilities, by about $563 a year, or just shy of $50 a month. That's a decrease of 4.2% on a commercial property of just about $1 million. That is the
Wonder if I should live in a commercial.
quick update of where we've landed since we last spoke. I did put the calendar up here just one more time so you can kind of see where council has action. On the 20th, we'll have another committee of the whole discussion. On the 25th, we'll hold our first public hearing. On the, I'm sorry, 25th is the publication. On the 4th, we'll hold our first public hearing. On the 18th, we could hold the second public hearing and adopt the budget, but should we decide to push that off, a special meeting could be called as late as the 28th to get that done. Any questions?
Questions for Jason?
And Your Honor, just to reiterate what Jason said, we heard in the work session about the possibility of the nickel. We have not, you have to take that action to give us that direction, but we've put that in there, assuming that you will debate that and discuss it at that meeting on the 20th and give us direction at that point in time.
Okay.
It will be a part of the first public hearing publication, so I just want you to be aware that we'll publish with the nickel. We can always come down off of that.
And those of our colleagues who are in the similar position that we are with the ability to move to the other levies are doing the same thing. I've talked to 3 or 4 of our other cities in the same
there's only 4
category.
of us.
Yeah.
I actually missed a note of mine I'd like to come back to if I can. And I'll show you the details of this at our next discussion, but combining the levies under 1124, the general fund levy would be forced to be reduced from 785 this year down to 669 by FY '29. So you're getting only about $160,000 a year in new tax dollars in the general fund. That's why it's so important that we have the ability to come back to those other levies down below and kind of backfill that number. And we are, as Decker said, one of the few cities in the state that will have that flexibility.
Because everybody else is already at the 810.
And into the other levies.
Right.
So that Senate Bill 1124, with that reduction in capacity, does that throw a monkey wrench into like bond ratings and
Yeah.
all of the?
One of our strengths, as you know, is not that you would necessarily go ask for those dollars, but you have the capacity to if you needed to. And when they see that capacity is limited, that will definitely impact their measurements, I'm sure. I would not anticipate, that crystal ball we always talk about, I wouldn't think it would be a reduction in our rating, but you never know. Certainly make an increase a little bit harder.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Jason. Thanks to the team and to the department heads who continue to work on our budget. We appreciate you. I'd like to move to consent item K, since we have a rep from Mr. Hartman, the 6125 Valley Drive. So this is a resolution approving a site plan for that piece of property. It's submitted by Jeff Hartman. His engineer is here, and we'd like to allow him to be heard first. Chris Townsend, thank you for being here, sir. Always nice to see you, my friend. Mark is our Director of Community Development. Mark Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me just get my slides in order here.
Yeah, take your time. Sorry, I made you move.
No. The case I'm going to present tonight is a little bit out of order, literally, from what I usually present, in the fact that the site has been developed and is built. So I'm going to try and walk you through that process and kind of how that came to be, provide you some understanding as you contemplate approval of the site development plan going forward. 6125 Valley Drive. This used to be the old Toro warehouse back when I was a kid. You'll notice it's pretty much accessed right off of Valley Drive. The applicant is Jeff Hartman. It's now called Sign Ninjas. They do yard signs. It's a site development plan modification, SDP modification is the term of art we use. It is an industrial and manufacturing use, warehousing as well. They do store some of the signs there. All the uses are allowed, but there have been recent additions to the building, especially the main building and some changes to the site topography that require a site development plan. They were done without approval of the Community Development Department. And just to kind of clarify how something like that might occur, we became aware of this potential project back in the summer of 2020. In fact, I had just started when I met with the business owner at his property and explained to him our process. For some reason, that process wasn't followed, and then at a subsequent visit of the Iowa DNR, and because of a phone call to our building department relative to sprinkler systems, we became aware of the construction activity that occurred. I will note that this is an I-2 district. Again, the use is allowed. It's an industrial nature, and the uses that have been added and are proposed, they're also allowed uses. So it's not like something that's there can't be there. It's just our process wasn't followed.
No
Surrounding
building permit pulled, nobody notified.
That is correct, sir, yep. The surrounding properties, at least on both flanks and behind it, are industrial as well. There is across Valley Drive, some A1 and R1 properties. Valley Drive has kind of had this bifurcation going back some time, where the south side tends to be more industrial and the north side more residential or agrarian. Here is the site development plan that's been contemplated. And again, this is to bring everything that's been done at the site into compliance. So we're showing you this as if it hasn't occurred, but nearly all of this, or most of it, actually occurred. So I'm going to use a slide here, a technique just to zoom in on this for you. I want to draw your attention to this north, I guess you'd call it northeast corner, northwest corner. There's been an addition here of about 2,800 square feet, maybe 23 foot wide by the length of the building. That was outdoor storage on the site for many years. There may have been even some walls or foundations that were in place prior, but that's been enclosed with a roof and full sides. So that has been enclosed. That exists now today. Again, we did not permit that construction nor review it before it occurred. There's been some re-roofing done on an existing building here in this area. And then the whole of the parking lot, I would just say, is kind of in a state of repair and reshaping. So that's important because this is all in the floodplain. So when we're moving dirt in the floodplain, it's really important to the city that we have done our review. We're required to do our review to keep our federal floodplain insurance status. And I'll go back to a normal view here. Yeah, so I think this slide I've pretty much covered. Let me kind of move on. Here's an aerial of the site, October 30th, 2020. So this would have been before anything occurred that would have required a zoning review or a building permit. So again, pay attention to the edge of the building here where you see some outdoor storage. That was totally fine, but it has become enclosed. And you can see the white roof. It's pretty obvious that roof is there. But I also mentioned there was some changes in the parking area and the drainage, retention basin that was on the site. Again, all things that are allowable, but we needed to review them first. I will give you kind of as of today, this is actually as of November, late December, November timeframe. I'll give you a street level view of that. Okay, so now you're looking at the building. The part that was enclosed, you can barely see it. It's this low slung roof here. You see these new white roofs. That's not the new part. There's a part just behind there that was enclosed. It's about 3,000 square feet, 2,800 square feet. Then we had some new roofs put on these buildings. Technically, that should have been, permit should have been pulled for the new roofs as well, but certainly for that new construction and closing that side structure. And then here, in what is floodplain and stormwater detention, a lot of earth moving, a lot of changing of topography. Probably all going to be fine in the end, but we do need that process to be approved before it happens. Just want to show you the floodplain designation as it is now. It is to the applicant's benefit that this floodplain is going to be receding under the newest maps. So some of that area is actually going to come out of the floodplain. I don't know if I threw that in there. Yeah, so there you go. So you can kind of see that retraction in the floodplain. Again, that's to the applicant's benefit, but these things should have been addressed under, at a prior time before being developed. So, we took this to planning and zoning, gave them the same presentation you got here. They did vote to approve it and recommended its approval, I should say. It will come before you tomorrow for your official vote up or down. But I wanted to make you aware of what transpired, why it's a concern to us, both from our FEMA status and from our building safety, building code status. It does cause staff a lot of concern when these things happen, and we just want to make you aware.
Questions for Mark? We'll start with Bill and then go to Lisa. Or
Go ahead, both, Lisa.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I heard about this last week in Bettendorf, and I can't see Mr. Herman right now, but we've got some excellent businessmen in Bettendorf, and I've always been proud of them. They've operated professionally, and I'm really disappointed in this. We've got processes in place when people build businesses, add on, all that kind of stuff, and those processes, as far as getting permits, yada, yada, a lot of them are for safety purposes. I don't appreciate how this was done, and I understand the language that went on and the way our staff were treated. They're not paid enough for this to be occurring. So I just want to make those comments right now because I understand it's going to be on consent tomorrow. But this infuriates me because I know this behavior's gone on before by this individual, so.
It could be moved from consent, should somebody wish to do that. And just to be clear, Townsend Engineering was not involved in the
That's correct.
pre-building issues. He's coming in to help bring in front of you something that you could understand and then approve.
Certainly, they've been,
It has nothing to do with Chris, and I know your comments were not directed at Chris, but
Right, and that's why I'm bringing it up tonight, because, the opportunity tomorrow night is not happening. But this has happened before with this individual, and I just think it's a bunch of crap. Our staff is not paid enough, and the behavior and the language that was used is just uncalled for, and it's unprofessional. So, and I'm embarrassed that this is going to be one of our businesses in Bettendorf. So, okay, on to Bill.
Bill?
Well stated, Lisa. Mark, you had a meeting with this individual and told him exactly what he needed to do prior to him pursuing this project without any permits or approvals.
That's correct, Alderman Connors. I did meet with him, and I also followed up that meeting with a letter and some code language so he would understand that.
So I'm concerned about approving a site development plan for a building that we don't know that it's going to meet our code. Do you know who any of the contractors were that worked on the project?
I personally do not.
Okay, especially the MEPs, that's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, have to be licensed by the state. If they aren't licensed by the state and the work's been done by somebody else, there's no way your building department can approve that installation. So it may be a moot point. I'm concerned about this going on, and to Lisa's point, this is the first time it happened with this individual. I'd like to give the owner a chance to come forward and let you know who his subcontractors are so you can sort out as to whether this building addition is going to be able to remain or if it's going to have to go away or what's going to happen with it. So based on that, Your Honor, I would like to defer this to the next meeting.
So we have a motion to remove it from consent and to postpone to the next meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, just to be clear, so is this motion just to remove it, and then is it to remove it from consent for the issue to the deferral to take place tomorrow, or are we doing that tonight?
I think we can do it tonight, but you tell me.
Well, as long as I just wanted to be clear if it was one overarching motion or whether it was
So remove it from consent
removing
and
it and then
secondarily.
doing
Take it
that.
off.
I can do that. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Move it tonight, we'll put an item on tomorrow to defer it.
Okay. So we're going to remove it from consent as item K pursuant to the motion which has a second. So let's do a roll call vote on removing
Want
K.
any other discussion first?
Well, let's get, can we have discussion on removal from consent?
Consent, removal from consent is typically just there is no discussion needed. The discussion will take place, and I think it's up, it's your, we could have
Typically,
that
we don't
discussion
have that
tonight,
discussion because we're going to take it off and there'll be discussion tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Right.
typically, right?
So we have a motion and a second that we have to, they don't have to vote to take it off. They could go down 5-2. But, probably not. So, Michelle, if you could, please call the roll.
Brown.
Aye.
Connors.
Aye.
Nauman.
Aye.
Sexer.
Aye.
Baden.
Aye.
Pelzinski.
Okay, we will remove consent K for your consideration tomorrow evening on the regular agenda. One thing that could happen there is it could be moved down the road, or it could be discussed tomorrow and voted upon.
Your Honor,
Oh, Adamson.
Adamson, what's your vote?
aye.
Okay, go right ahead. Do you have a question or concern, anything? And we're gonna
No,
continue
no,
a
sir.
discussion because it came off, but that doesn't mean we can't have questions as tonight of Mr. Hunt that might also be helpful to the engineer to resolve this matter. So go right ahead, Greg.
Go right ahead.
He didn't have anything else.
Oh, you just needed to be heard on your vote. You didn't have anything
they-
else?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Frank, go ahead. And then
Just out
Jerry?
of curiosity, since this has gone so far, and it seems like a long ways before it was caught, are there any fines for this person? And if there isn't, there should be, because he needs to know that this can't happen. Can't be just a situation where we're gonna bend over backwards and let something like this happen, because it'll happen again with somebody else if we do.
Yeah, I understand your point, Alderman. What we did was we issued a stop work order as soon as we became aware of it. We also issued a civil citation for construction without a permit at the base level allowed by our code, which is $75 plus $90 in court fees, roughly. Those were paid by the petitioner without contest. And then we also will be charging double permit fees as required under our code when this type of thing does happen. And those permit fees are kind of a sliding scale, so the cost of the project will determine what your fee would be, then it will be ×2 for every fee item that comes forward.
Thank you.
Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I've got two questions. One is, has the owner followed up based on your suggestions or requirements? Has he followed up and actually applied for the permits?
He can't apply for the permits until he gets, the actual vertical construction permits cannot be applied for under our system until you get the site development plan review done.
Okay. And then the second question is, what happens to that stormwater? You know,
So they would be required to meet our stormwater retention policy, just like any other development. They've hired Townsend Engineering to help them do that.
so at this point in time, we don't know what they're gonna do with it. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Because I know Mr. Townsend would like to be heard. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Chris Townsend, Townsend Engineering, and we've been involved since this all, I guess, since he got caught, let's put it that way. And so the process is a little backwards, obviously. So what we need to figure out, I think, tonight, you know, since you guys didn't defer it yet, I guess, but are looking to, you were asking about contractors and building permits and that kind of thing. Well, we have done a lot of that work, a lot of plans, hired an architect, had to analyze the entire building, as a matter of fact. So he's doing more than he would have had to do, let's put it that way to begin with, which is fine. The problem is the city won't look at any of this information until this site development plan is approved. So if we don't approve that, you know, I just don't know where we go from here. We can't even get to that point to start that, you know, with this contractors figuring out, you know, there's gonna be some things, we might have to dig up some footings, expose some interior framing, who knows what, you know, but there's gonna be a lot with the building department that we have to do, but they won't allow that to start until we get this part figured out. So I don't know how this all works, I guess is why I'd like to address that right now.
Sure. So tomorrow, we'll have to figure out how council wants to move forward, but you're right, they're not gonna go inspect until they've got a site plan that they can follow to go inspect, so.
Right.
And Mark will give us some guidance tomorrow relative to his thoughts in that category. So it'll be on our regular agenda as an item to have some more discussion rather than a consent agenda item. That's really all we've done now. So we'll take it up to discuss it again tomorrow, and certainly you're welcome to be here. It'll be 7 o'clock meeting, like normal.
Can't wait.
Anything else on this item? All right, it's going to be on our regular agenda, so it will not remain as consent item K. Thank you for being here, Mr. Townsend. Let's move to, Mark, while you're there, why don't we go through what you've got? Let's look at consent J, and my apologies to Brian Schmidt. We'll get to you. 3240 62nd Street. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this is really just kind of down the street, although it's access off 60th Street, it also backs up to Valley Drive. And this one is done in the right order. So this is going to be a normal site development plan presentation that you're used to.
Yeah.
Again, off of 62nd Street, borders Valley Drive to the north, kind of a flag lot in our industrial park. The applicant is Brent Martin, site development plan for Lot 3 of Bettendorf Industrial Park, 5th edition. This lot is vacant at the moment. They do plan to build contractor suites. I kind of put that in parents. Right now, it's just one contractor suite, and more may come in the future. That's, not necessarily true, but something they would like to do if things work out. But they will build one for themselves, for Mr. Martin's business. So again, just for one building at this time, rather large site. You're going to see here in a second that we're really only approving a very small portion of this to be developed at this time. Others would have to come before you before construction would begin. As well as our previous case, this is also in the floodplain, and of course they will have to meet our 2 foot of freeboard, which is a foot more than required by FEMA. Zoning and future land use are indicated here. We're again in I-2 industrial. We have the residential across on the north side of Valley Drive. I kind of described that pattern before. We also have the city of Panorama Park bordering this property, but they have a residential use that will be similar to the residential use you see in yellow at the top of this picture here. The future land use is also industrial, so everything's lining up. This is an industrial use with the contractor suites, and it's contemplated for industrial use in the future, so things again align correctly. Site development plan has access off 62nd Street via 44-foot wide parking and drive lane here that leads to just one building at the current time in this location. They actually have sufficient parking, more than enough parking. As you enter the site, they also have indoor parking because it's a contractor suite. You can drive in and park a truck or a vehicle. Tree count's more than sufficient. We already have established in this older part of town utilities off of Valley Drive and sanitary sewer coming up from 62nd. Stormwater detention is accommodated for on the adjacent Lot B. So Lot B for this subdivision kind of serves both subdivisions, if you will, in the stormwater detention. We do have some building elevations, pretty simple. 2-door entries for the contractor vehicles, and then an office work area for the business owner. We did have a few recommendations. Compliance with our floodplain regulations, of course, is required. The sewer plants must be approved prior to there's a building permits. We want to make sure that's appropriately sized, especially for the potential development at this site. We have an easement we want to make sure that gets put in place correctly, and we have potential future access to Valley Drive will be determined by the city engineer. I want to kind of go back and spend some time on that one. Right now, this is only access through this flag off 62nd Street. Should this larger site, 6.4 acres, I think, get built out, our fire code EMS access would require some type of curb cut to provide appropriate egress to this area. Now that is not happening today or tomorrow. that would depend on future development and adding these other contractor suites kind of along the perimeter of this building or of this parcel. Again, we're not there today. It's not going to happen right away, but it could be something in the future. But that'll be at the city's discretion when we pull the trigger, so to speak, for that to occur. It was unanimously recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 15th, 2023. I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions? Okay, no questions. I'd like to entertain a motion that this remain on tomorrow night's consent agenda as item J.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll go back up to consent item E, and this is for our Public Works Director, Brian Schmidt, maybe our engineer, Brent Warlock, because I know Brent's been working hard on this. Brian, you got the
Yes,
floor.
he's on the line, so I'll just kick it off. So what we have in front of us tonight, or tomorrow night, on consent item E is a resolution setting the date for a public hearing and directing the advertising for the bids for the landing project. The proposed improvements consist of constructing a new aquatic facility and ice rink infrastructure, including the demolition and removal of the existing facility, new construction of multiple buildings on the site, access drives, parking lots, and related mechanical and electrical improvements for this site. The ice rink itself will not be constructed at this time, but it will be underneath a future contract. Brent sent out an email to you guys earlier today. The estimates are still coming in at 95% plans, and I believe that they were due by the end of the day today. As these bids come in, the first thing, as we see some overages, we are going to be value engineering these when they do go out to bid, which is the plans and specs will go out next Tuesday, and the bids will be open on April 11th. But we'll establish several alternatives. We know that we're seeing some of the shade structures, the decorative lighting, and the fencing. So what we'll do is we'll add those as alternative bids to see where that pricing comes in and where we can adjust that cost. So I'll turn it over to Brent. First of all, if you guys have any questions, and then Brent can ask some more details as he's been working with RDG on this contract, as well as Kim Kidwell.
I say we go to Brent, and then we can ask questions of the team, maybe. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, Brian, I think really hit the nail on the head there. As Alderman Sexer had emailed in response to the renderings that I sent you, we are still 95% basically a quality assurance set that's due. I'll have the PDF in the morning. So we'll have final estimates from all the designers that'll be part of that. We do anticipate some of the larger kind of ticket items, the shade structures specifically, they're currently metal structures, pretty ornate architectural. We know those are probably going to be the first thing on the chopping block. So we do anticipate fitting several designs to find something that'll fit into our overall budget and our project from an aesthetic perspective. Another thing that I pointed out in the email and I'd just like to bring up is that the overall project budget, including the frozen piece, there was about a $3 million frozen budget that was anticipated, in about a year from now. As we were working through the plans, originally there was a standalone building to serve frozen that would house the chiller, all the mechanical electrical equipment, as well as Zamboni, and provide some storage. It really made more sense when final design got going that we connected that to the restroom structure, the bathhouse for the pool building. Going to save some money with that design, but that also means we may have to pull and bring a little bit of that money forward into this project. Again, not exceeding the budget for the shared budget of the third, but having to potentially bring some of our money forward that we had already planned to do on frozen. So just the frozen may not end up being a $3 million project. That might be $1 million or $1.5 million, and we may have to bring forward a little bit of that money. But again, we'll have a better feel for that over the next the rest of the week, basically.
Great, thank you, sir. Questions for Brian or for Brent? We'll go to Bill.
Either one of you, these alternates that you're going to put out there, they're going to be separate of the mobilization costs for the project. So if you decide to pull them out, we're not already getting a double dip on the mobilization costs that were part of this to begin with.
Yeah, so Alderman Connors, those will be an add alternate, all of them, so that way we could piece together basically the total budget. We could bring them in or if we decide to not go with any of them, we would not be required to.
Okay, so the full cost of those would come out, including the
Correct.
mobilization that was part of the
It
overall
is a
project.
separate, so that they'll have their own mobilization and installation costs associated with them.
Perfect.
Yeah, all of the general fees would be tied to it directly.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right,
Your
I'd
Honor.
like,
I do have one question.
hi, Greg, yeah.
Thank you. Is this new building now, one building, is that still going to have the warming house as originally planned?
Yes, yes. So there's actually a total, the original concept that was obviously very preliminary, just showed one large building right in the center.
Yes.
As we got working through it, that really wasn't the ideal way to do it. So we broke those into smaller structures. Did require a little bit of additional, HVAC and plumbing work, but the structures themselves got fairly smaller. I think we had originally a 6,000 or 7,000 square foot building, but that does include a standalone warming house. We worked with Kim and Liz and their staff to review the needs of what we currently, the space needs of what we currently have. That obviously we know we were just operating out of the temporary sea cans, but it at least gave us an idea on square footage. So we have about 20% more square footage for skate rental and a little workstation in that building. And then there's I think we ended up at about 750 or 800 square foot warming house. Obviously, then we'll have additional amenities on the exterior that will come with the frozen project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, appreciate that. Any other questions? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion that this remain on tomorrow night's agenda as consent item E.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll leave that on consent as item E. Let's go back to Jason Shat and you can stay right where you're at, sir, for consent item D, now that we've hopped around a lot.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the Waterfront Convention Center, which is in its, I believe, 13th, going on 14th year of operation, is in need of replacement of all the chairs, the convention-style chairs that we all sat in just about a week ago. Believe it or not, the cost of outfitting that entire place with those chairs is a little over $200,000. So that obviously requires a council resolution. Important note, though, that this money does come from the capital replacement fund that we have set up, and we share the funding mechanism with the Isle of Capri. It's funded by the room night fee at the hotel, and we are working with their staff to kind of reprioritize that projects within that fund to make sure that it remains adequate to take care of other pending improvements at the building.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason about our Gitchy, Yaya gaming purchase? All right, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion this remain on tomorrow night's agenda as consent item D.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let's move to food, drink, and friends. And for that, I welcome the gentleman on either side of me, as well as Kim Kidwell and all of her hard work. Kim is our Director of Culture and Recreation. Our city administrator is Decker Plain. Our city attorney is Chris Curran. Lady and gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start, and then if both Chris or Kim want to jump in, they can, or if they're adequate, they can stop there. So all of you know that with the resignation of our food and beverage manager back at the end of the season, we had felt for some time that we should take a look at the opportunity or option of having a private operator for at least a season to see if that could be something that could be entertained long-term. We did an RFP for those services, and we had two proposals. The proposal that we chose is the Food Drink Friends, and they're affiliated with Tangled Wood and their various companies. They have very sufficient capacity to be able to handle this operation, and we've negotiated with them over the last probably 6 weeks pretty strong, and Kim and John have worked exclusively with their team. So we have, I think, a really good understanding of what we need on the ground. It might be a little sophisticated at first because we may have to use our liquor license until April 1st to get us through if we have golfers during that period of time. And we anticipate that they would take over April 1st, and we should be able to have them have a gaming license, a liquor license by then, and should be able to take the operation over. We expect this would run from April 1 to, I think it's middle of November, and then we would evaluate whether or not we would go forward with another agreement. But we feel really good about what we've negotiated and how this will work. And Chris did all of the unbelievable contract work in a very short period of time. And Kim and John worked their tails off to negotiate this, and we feel pretty good about it. And we recommend your approval of it. So I don't know if Kim would like to say anything, or Chris has any items to mention about the contract.
I think that about covers it. We're just looking forward to working with them. They have a lot of experience, obviously, with restaurant management. So I think it'll be a good thing for the community.
And the only thing I would add is that this is a professional services agreement. This is not a lease, and I think one of the big benefits of the services agreement is that we get much more say into how the services are provided, when they're provided, the standards to which they will be provided. There's more. It's more of a partnership, which I think is really in concert with the types of services that we have here, which are food and beverage services that are ancillary to the primary service, which is a golf course. And so I think this is a good way to go to see how this works, to get some good data moving forward, and certainly having a provider like what we have here in front of us. They know the business, and I think it will help the food and beverage service at the golf course moving forward, whether this is a long-term arrangement or not. But I think this is a really smart way of moving forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the team? Bill?
Can somebody just give a thumbnail of your discussions with them as to what this is going to look like as far as food, fare, whether they're going to allow birthday parties, those types of things?
Sure. So basically, the agreement is they will provide, obviously, food and beverage service, lunch, dinner. Breakfast will be more of a grab-and-go type option during the weekdays, but full breakfast on the weekends. As far as golf outings, league play, things like that, catered things, they're going to work. Their management person will work directly with John, the golf pro, to make sure all of those things are still provided as far as food for those kinds of things. And then as far as birthday parties, events, those types of things, I think we kind of put that in their hands, how much they think they can handle with everything else that's going on. So it will just depend on what they think about having a lot of events, parties, things like that.
I would say this, I think we felt that the course itself was our primary concern, and that if there were going to be parties that use the pavilion as much as they can, or perhaps the pergola, but the golf course itself and the golf dining area was more for golf operations versus parties and things like that. But the good thing is, as Chris put it, we'll have some ability to be judicious how we figure that out, and John and Kim will be actively involved in those discussions and those appointments with them.
Drop in for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is not going to be restrictive if husband and wife want to go there?
Yeah, I think what Kim said is the Monday through Friday operations can be more of a grab and go, so there'll be some like breakfast sandwiches available to drop in a microwave, and there'll be an attendant there. There may not be a cook there for breakfast, except on the weekends, but then lunch and dinner, they would have full operations, but I don't know that it's going to be full restaurant. It's going to be more like a grill, limited menu versus a full menu, I would say.
Yeah, it seems to me they're gonna be offering soups, salads, sandwiches, burgers, appetizers, that kind of fare.
I would think that those graduation parties and other things that are already on the book, the sooner we can provide notice, whether we are or not going to provide.
So we don't have anything booked. We did stop that booking, late fall of last year, when we knew that our manager was resigning at the end of the year. And I have been taking all the calls and emails for people looking to book, and I've just been taking their information and not making any guarantees. So right now, we have nothing booked.
Oh, wow. I thought we did, but okay, good. Yes, Scott, and we'll just go right down the line.
Thank you, Your Honor. It seemed in the packet that there was some carving off of the forge.
Yes.
Speak to that.
So, we wanted to be able to use city staff, golf staff, for the Forge building. However, if the liquor license is under Food Drink Friends, then our staff at the Forge would be unable to serve liquor, beer, seltzer out of the Forge, which seemed to be a real decrease in service for us, for people who are hitting driving range balls or, making that turn. So in order for our staff to sell liquor or alcohol out of the Forge, then we have to get our own liquor license just for the Forge. So that will be coming forward, probably the next meeting or two.
And I think we didn't want the tail to wag the dog here. I mean, this is a golf course, and the driving range and the Forge are critical. And so in order to not, make that overly complicated, we felt like that was the best way to go, was to just separate the Forge from it.
But it's a much less expensive liquor license. It's like a carryout license just for that building. They do have great interest in providing food truck service for like the pavilion and for special events that we can tailor to the Forge or the range that we might be able to work with. We're going to planning on working to make that happen. So we think that the way that it's going to work services our need, and then John can use those employees to work the range, to work the Forge, to work the carts as his employees and move them around as he sees fit. And then they can concentrate on the pavilion and the grill as primary, and then bring in the food truck to enhance those service offerings when we have them.
Secondly, from a financial standpoint, I know it hasn't been too many years that the grill was responsible for or had a part in a fairly significant operational loss to the city. I think that has improved. Some of it was, I think, the way it was being managed, and she was pretty scrappy. I wonder if the financial decision on the term for this transaction, can you speak to how you settled on the number, and do we have some optimism that it's
Sure. So,
positive?
and Jason, feel free to jump in here. Seemingly, our loss at the grill is around $50,000 a year, give or take. And most of that is in the off months. So we're hoping that we don't really have much of a loss with this professional services agreement, seeing as how it's only happening through the months that we actually are playing golf. And so we don't anticipate a lot of losses in the profit and loss split. And so the 50,000 loss that we could incur is made up in the amount that we're paying them per month. So is that a good, yeah. So that's kind of our take on why the money was split that way. As far as the true loss, unfortunately, the different things that were calculated during past management were difficult to come up with a firm number as far as how much we were spending on food, how much, cost of food for plate, that detailed information, we just hadn't been keeping good track of. And so I think this will allow us to keep better track of what we do make in those months.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Jerry?
So that was my question also, Your Honor, which was the financials. So if I understand right, we're anticipating a $50,000 loss again this year. And Jason will budget for that then.
I've actually kind of taken a look at the budget, and we'll pay them the $4,000 per month fee for, I believe it's 9.5 months, really. And I think that's their backstop against our experience of losing between $50,000 and $65,000 in a good year, really. But I think we anticipate with their expertise and the built-in market that there will be some sort of profit share in the arrangement. Ideally, that cuts pretty deeply into that monthly payment that we make to them. So from a budget standpoint, I'd like to budget it at kind of a break even in the grill specifically, and see where it goes from there. But this is going to be kind of a trial year, a trial season for all of us. So.
Thank you. Frank?
Will the card players still be using the facilities, Kim, or are you thinking about maybe moving them down to the community center?
Yeah, so the card players are more than welcome if they'd like to purchase food while they're there and eat there. I don't think, extended time taking up tables will necessarily be what Food Drink Friends is looking for. But yes, we will extend the community center to them where they can bring their own food, they can bring their lunch. We have space for them to play cards there if they'd like to.
And we talked about us manning it during the winter, perhaps with a person, for lack of a better word, if they want to be there in the winter with very little offerings, maybe coffee, and if we wanted to run liquor, we could. But we talked about manning it ourselves for the winter with very minimal ability there. We would probably not run the restaurant. Would just be coffee, soda, that sort of thing.
Other questions? All right, then I'd like to entertain a motion that this remain on tomorrow night's agenda as consent C.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, take a look at your remaining consent agenda items. Is there any particular item on tomorrow night's consent agenda that a council member would like to discuss at this time? Greg, we can start with you if you've got something.
I just had a question. I think they were talking about doing an overlay on 23rd Street. And my question was, is that going to, are we going to put in an overlay or do work on that road and then have to tear it up again for the landing?
No, we're gonna add a
That's
turn
separate.
lane. When we do the work will be done by July 1st, and it's all in contemplation of the landing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else on consent?
And Your Honor, just, Brian could probably explain it. For 23rd Street, all of the homes that are on north of the creek will have access and availability to get out of their homes at all times. There may be one-way traffic. They may have to go north or south depending on the work of the contractor, but all of them will have access out and in.
Perfect. Okay, let's entertain a motion to approve all. Okay, Jerry?
So from the other end, then, we will have, people will have access to the park, too.
Correct. Always have access to the park. It may be a one-way flow. And we've even talked about the possibility of 25th Street at the back end of the band shell as an opportunity as well. So, but we'll always have access to the park and programming.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on any particular consent agenda item?
Brian, if I'm wrong, make sure you tell me that right now.
No, you're correct.
I don't hear that often. Thank you.
All right, the remaining consent agenda items I would like to approve at this time by motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our consent agenda for tomorrow night. Any operational item any particular council member would like to discuss at this time? Understanding we've added one to our operational items. All right, anything to be added by council this evening? I have nothing. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Good work, people. Thank you. Let me in here.
Nice job, Your Honor.
Mr. Schmidt?
1 hour and